All right. Hello, I am Anthony Campolo. I am a developer advocate at StepZen, and I am here to do a stream for you all. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I've been deep in a lot of different projects, and this is kind of the culmination of a lot of that work in terms of features that were built along the way. So it's going to be great to show off where we're at now and what we can really do. So I'm excited because this is kind of like a weird, like mad scientist kind of experiment in some sense, where this is like a theoretical way of like how you can stitch these things together in a way that just helps you generalize in general how it works. But we'll get to that as we go. So what we're going to do is basically take a bunch of GraphQL APIs and stitch them all together into one GraphQL API. And where we're going to do that is with Redwood API attached to a Postgres database deployed on a netlify function, which is basically an AWS Lambda. And that's going to be two separate Redwood apps that are both going to be that will then be connected together. That could be done with a single query. So this will make a lot more sense when we actually see the code and all that. But that's the high level explanation of what's going on here. So go ahead and share my screen. Cool. All right, so these are the two examples that we have now, Redwood Mesh posts and Redwood Mesh users. And we're going to start with the posts, and this is going to be our schema. It's very simple. It's what you would get from the Redwood blog tutorial, just a post model with an ID, title, body, and created at. And then we're connecting it to a Postgres database specifically. So this could also say SQLite or MySQL, but this is what we're going to be doing here. So we're going to open up our code editor. And this is a fairly unique project that we're doing because we're not really going to use the Redwood front end too much at all. It's mostly going to be a lot of stuff in the APIs. So close all these out. Great. Need a lot of screen real estate to do this. All right, so here is going to be our Prisma schema, and that's all we got to do to set it up. Now, I've made certain opinionated choices here in terms of how we're doing this, but there's many, many ways you could do this in terms of what database you want to use, how you want to spin it up, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to be using Railway, which is a really, really fast way of getting a Postgres database spun up. So I'm going to do that. And then we're going to do, so that initialized the project, and then we're going to do add, and then you can do these add-ons. So we're going to do Postgres, and this is a little simple command that is going to take the database URL, and so Railway variables get is like grabbing that and then injecting it into our .env file, and this is then injected through the Prisma schema right here. Database URL. All right, and once you got that going, this is going to be Prisma migrate, and it's going to create a posts table for us, and that's going to then give us our whole database setup, so that excuse me, we can scaffold a post, and this is where we get a lot of the power of Redwood in terms of like the generators and whatnot, and it's going to have inputs for creating just blog posts. So very simple kind of example, but it's really good because it's fairly canonical. All right, so should be everything. So now we're going to get our dev server going here, and we'll test the API. Actually, let's do this first. So here we're going to create a post. This is a blog post. So there's our first blog post, and then another blog post, and the other. All right, so now we got that. We can query it from our GraphQL serverless handler. And this is where we're going to end up with two of these things that are each going to be their own endpoint. And I like to check whenever I get these things spun up is you can do a query where you just check the version of Redwood. So just kind of make sure like API is up and giving responses back. And then you can do something like this posts query, which then returns our 2 blog posts that we just created. And then once you got that all going, you can deploy it very simply with setup netlify deploy. And mostly what this does is it just creates a netlify.toml for you right over here. And this is just giving it the build commands and all that and giving you a functions folder. And now we're going to create a Git repo. And this is going to be Redwood mesh posts. And we're going to create that repository. And now we're going to initialize staging area and commit to remote and push to main. And now we can get this deployed on Netlify. So what's really cool about kind of all the stuff that I'm showing you right now is Railway, Netlify, all this stuff is that these are all, everything I'm showing you is on the free tier. So like some people are kind of uncomfortable building on like these like Silicon Valley, super highly funded, like tech startup kind of things. And that's reasonable, but there's no downside. Like if you're doing it and just like totally free just to prototype at least. So that's what I really enjoyed. It's anyone who can like watch this can like build this exact same thing, which is pretty cool. So we're gonna do Redwood mesh posts. And then here is the only tricky part is you have to then inject that database environment variable here. And there's a way you can do this where it really doesn't show exactly what you're doing. That database URL. And you want to stick connection limit equals 1 as the end right there. All right, so that's going to be going for a while. So while that's doing its thing, we're going to get this other guy going. And now we're going to have an almost identical schema, except it's going to have a user instead of post. And we're going to open this up over here. Okay. Now we're going to do the exact same thing we just did, except a little bit differently. So again, we're going to initialize a Railway project, and then we're going to give it an add-on with Postgres. And then get that environment variable set. I think this is probably the fastest way I know of to spin up a Postgres database, but there's a lot that are basically just as fast. So it is a good time to be doing Postgres, let me tell you. All right, now that is going to be our users table instead of a posts table. And we're going to scaffold, again, same scaffold, except now it's going to be user instead of posts. And then as you can see, it's going to be the same deploy as well. And now we're going to check that out over here. So last thing, kick the dev server on. And we're going to go to, so it's a post now, it's users. And now we're going to create user. Let's go with, okay. Now we got our users in there, and let's check our GraphQL API. And had a query for this one as well. All right, so now we're asking for users and the ID and name back. So very similar thing. And we're also going to get it set up for netlify deploy like so. And if you wanted to do this with Vercel, you would replace netlify with Vercel, and render is the other main deployed target that has this kind of like really, really nice first-class integration. But there's a lot that you can kind of hack it to get to work with as well if you're determined enough and find that interesting. But if you want to kind of stick with what's just going to work out of the box, those three are the ones to go with. Okay. Remote and push to main. Okay, so that should be that. That was posts. Yep. And then users. I did not create the repo first. That's right. Users. Okay, let's try that again. Cool. Okay, now I'm gonna get netlify back up again. Or what? This is the point of the stream where I have entirely too many windows open. Okay. Excellent. All right. Redwood mesh, and this will be users. And we're going to do the same dance again here with the database URL. Boom. Yep. All right. I think that is it. Cool. And so now that we spent all the time doing that, we should have another one going somewhere around here. So let's go back to that first site we deployed. There we go. Yeah. No, not that one. All right, cool. You just do that and close some of these things out real quick. Okay, let's see if these guys are going yet. All right, cool, cool. So that's not up yet. Okay. Let's see what's going on. It may have been still going from before. Let's see. This is, that's the users one. Where's the other one? Okay, well, let's see what happens. Also nice thing about these just railway things that you spin up is you can tear them down really easily as well as these keys are really basically totally disposable. Okay, so now we're gonna get this open again. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm not gonna lose it this time. All right, and then over here, this was the users, which is still building, and then the same thing. Okay, cool. You get a lot of logs from doing this, let me tell you. What we're gonna see, actually, is this right here. So we have a netlify function set up for our GraphQL endpoint, Redwood mesh posts. And this is the test one. I spun it before, which is going to take a little while to build. And then over here, users. Yep, there's that one. I also know because I have to also rename the domains to do that first. Cool. Okay. Sweet. Yeah, this is always the part where it's like, all right, time to wait for your thing to build. So while that's going, both those things are going, let's build out the StepZen part. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a single schema that's going to merge all of this stuff together. And it starts off with this index.graphql file. And it's just going to bring in two schemas, one for the posts and one for the users. So that's going to go right there. We then have a schema directory that holds however many schemas you want. And now this is the actual GraphQL directive part that supposedly came here for. Okay, now what's happening here is we're declaring a post type, much like we've been dealing with all along with ID, title, body, created at, and then we have a type query, which has a posts query, and at GraphQL, that's the at GraphQL directive, and it is taking in the endpoint, and that endpoint is this big netlify function thing that we're deploying. So once you deploy the Road API, because it's a single lambda-lith, it's only one endpoint you just have to shove into StepZen. And when I did my first Redwood StepZen integrations, it was reversed. So it was the Redwood API was doing a GraphQL query to a StepZen API. And now this is inverted, whereas it's going to be the Redwood API fed into a larger mesh of StepZen API stuff, which I think is pretty cool. And now that we got that, let's get the users one created. Do that. And this is going to be exactly the same deal with the function, except it's user. And then let's first see where these are at. All right, cool. Cool. Okay, so over here, let's give ourselves a nice domain name. And this is, make sure I know which one this is. This is users. So it's going to be called Redwood Mesh Users. Yep. Okay. Sweet. All right, that should, let's check. So the one over here, this is post still going. Okay. I think this will hopefully work. Awesome. So now we're getting the users API that we just deployed, and that is our Redwood version. And then here we can get the users Bob and Alice that we just created over there. And now this, taking its sweet time, I'm going to go ahead and name this one Redwood Mesh Posts. All right. Cool. One way to see like what your functions are and how they work is if you actually go to your functions tab here, you can see, so this is that one GraphQL thing we got deployed, and you can get some kind of information about it. And it won't open the graphical editor when you actually deploy. So that's why I'm using Insomnia to just send a query versus opening up like the whole Redwood kind of backend graphical thing that you have in development. And let's see, that looks like that one's going. So let's test it over here. All right, and then this will be posts right there. All right, now we got both of those. We can also check. Actually, let's not do that. All right, so now we have both of those going. Let's get the StepZen going. we already have our schemas created and everything. All we have to do is run handy dandy StepZen start, and it'll ask us to name our endpoint. We're going to name it StepZen GraphQL Mesh. And this is going to both deploy it as well as kick it open on localhost 5000 here. And this is going to be my awesome query. That won't fail. That will give us both the users and the posts from both of them together, like so. And we can also see that here in Insomnia. And we are doing this now with also our API key here in the headers. So you have to use that to access the StepZen mesh. But that is the whole thing in terms of how it works end to end, from generating them totally from scratch, spinning them up, getting them in the cloud, getting them through the thing. So it took about 20 minutes, which was also with a little bit of user errors. Also, it could have been done probably in 15, but yeah. And that's really a lot of the value of this stuff, is once you get the workflow going, it's just like so fast to get these things out and to test them and to get other people endpoints that they can test. So it's really cool. I'm a big fan. And let's see where my StreamYard ended up over here. Yeah. Cool. And stop screen sharing. And awesome. So check us out on StepZen.com, and we'll have more content coming out around the GraphQL directive and other stuff that we're working on. There's a lot of things in the pipeline right now that are really exciting. So check us out at StepZen.com, and we have the Twitch as well as the YouTube, and we have a Discord as well. So we'd love to see you there and help you with whatever you're building with. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone.